Thank you very much.
Anyway, this is what I had to read, but I...
Good.
This is a summary only.
If my father would have been here, he would enjoy hearing you. And if my mother would have been here, she even would believe you. Well, thank you for inviting me to speak. I really feel privileged, and I have a special delight because one of the graduate students I hold on my arms when she was like maybe 3 months. I'm not going to identify her unless she's volunteering to raise her hand. No, she's not willing to. She just nodded. This is Natalie. But I'm not going to mention her name in order not to embarrass her. And I prepared a talk, but this morning I dropped the talk, and I want to tell you instead of it on somebody. He was an unwanted child. When he was born, his unmarried mother gave him for adoption. The first candidates for adoption didn't want to take him because they wanted a girl and he was a boy. So he was adopted by another couple. He was kind of a hippie, traveled the world, went to a college. When he saw the cost of the college and that it will consume all the savings of his adopting parents, he dropped out of the college, but he stayed at the college in order to study the things he liked, to go after his passion. He survived on sleeping on his friend's floor and collecting Coke cans and giving them for recycling for 5 cents. 5 cents a can. Many years later, he said that one of the courses which affected him the most in the college was calligraphy. Anybody of you went to study calligraphy? It's not a common thing, but he mentioned it, that this is one of the courses which affect him the most, and we will see in a minute why. Then, before the age of 30, he was running a cutting-edge company very successfully that he created with a friend of him, which defined the way people are doing some of their daily work. Then at the age of 30, the man that he brought in order, a seasoned executive that he brought to run with him the company, ousted him. The board of directors decided to throw him out of the company. He was totally devastated. He started another company from scratch, from nothing, and redefined another industry from the beginning, and made a success in that other company. Then he went back to the first company. He was called to come back to the first company that he created and began to take it from success to success. Then, before the age of 50, he got cancer. He survived the cancer. This was like 203, 204. And took the original company, which he started with a friend in the garage, like in all the stories, to be the most valuable company in the United States. And today, he relinquished his job as CEO and became the chairman of the company because apparently his health is not good again. And the man I mentioned is, of course, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs today announced that he relinquished the job of CEO and became chairman. And the story of the life of Steve Jobs, the accomplishment, the failures, the ability to weather failures, is something which I think worthwhile to talk and study in every school, not in MBA, but in every subject, because it shows you the spirit of man. Somebody told me that in the United States there are 3 narratives. All the movies, all the stories, all the televisions are always the same 3 stories. The man who came from nowhere and got close to the sun, the man who got, or the woman who got too close to the sun and the wings melted and he or she fell on the earth, and the one who fell on the earth and was redeemed and was able to do it again. And Steve Jobs has done these 3 things. When history will look back on this period, I think that Steve Jobs, by the way, excuse me there, if the baby will cry again, please don't leave the room. This is a terrific sound, so we want to hear it very clear, okay? So please don't leave the room. That's a beautiful sound. So when history will judge the end of the 20th century and the 21st century, I think that Steve Jobs will go to the pantheon where very few people during history are, the class of Michelangelo and Shakespeare. Because before everything else, before being an engineer, he's a great artist, a genius. He was able to provide such a user experience which redefined the way that people are listening to music, redefined the way that how people buy music, he redefined the way how people communicate, he redefined the way how people using computers, because if you look on the hours that you are using your smartphone compared to your desktop, for most of people they are spending more time on their smartphone than on their desktop. Google search from telephones is growing in a much higher rate than from desktop. He redefined the way we are seeing video on the iPad, the iPod, the iPhone, the Mac Air. Really an amazing accomplishment, and all of it done by a kid, an unwanted kid who failed and was able to collect himself and to put himself together and to start from the beginning. So failing college, running the Apple company didn't deter him from his vision. He gave, I thought in the beginning, but I was afraid that he will say that this is a cheap exercise, so I didn't do it, but maybe I've done a mistake. I thought in the beginning to bring my PC and instead of me talking, to show you the speech that Steve Jobs gave in getting his honorary doctorate in Stanford in 2005. It's a 14-minute speech that you can see it in YouTube, and I highly recommend it. It's very inspiring speech, and it's really very telling, where he tells what he learned from all this experience. But what he says, and I mentioned calligraphy, he said that when he was dropped out of college and stayed another year and a half on campus, just wandering around and going to learn what he wanted, he saw that there was a calligraphy. And he was, as you can understand from what he has done later, he has a terrific sense of aesthetic. I watched him and Bill Gates on a podium of a conference which is called All Things Digital. They were able to put the two together, and then they asked each one what he can say about the other. And these two guys were not very good friends, as you probably know. So Bill Gates said that Steve Jobs has a terrific sense of aesthetic. And Steve Jobs, who wanted to say also some kind thing about Bill Gates, he said Bill Gates is a great philanthropist, which is a very good which is a very good merit. A very good friend of mine, Steve Levy, wrote a book called The Perfect Thing. The Perfect Thing. He wrote about the iPod. As you remember, the first one of this series, iPad, iPod, iPhone, was the iPod, which was really redefining the way we hear music. And he interviewed Bill Gates. And don't take me wrong, Bill Gates is a great entrepreneur. Let another college dropout, and Asher and Shimon, you have to think if really...
Don't say that here.
My wife always tells me not to brag that my oldest son, who was one of the creators of instant messaging, didn't finish high school. He said, this sent the wrong message to young people. But
you graduated.
I'm graduated, okay, that's true. I will tell you why I graduated. I graduated, I will come to it in a minute. But nevertheless, Bill Gates said about Steve Jobs that he has a great sense of aesthetic, and he attributes the part of the success of the Macintosh to this calligraphy course that he went 10 years before he came out with the Macintosh, because he said because of this course in calligraphy, he was so keen to put on the Macintosh all the fonts. If you are too young to remember, but one of the main things that the Macintosh really changed is the fonts of the documents. All of a sudden, you were able to create documents with variety of fonts, with variety of sizes of fonts. Today, you take it for granted that you go and select Arial 10 or 12. Before that, there was only one type of letters, and all the documents look the same thing. And here it shows you the relationship between great user experience and the success of a product. So what Steve Jobs, one of the many messages which are embedded in this speech is that go after your passion, go and do the things you like, go and learn the things you like. You never know where and how the dots are going to be connected. There are a lot of morals to study from the story of Steve Jobs, how you cope with failure, how you follow your passion, the importance of design. We cannot go to the whole thing, and I think you can spend a very nice semester on just using this as a case study for many, many, many things. I want to tell you why I was so impressed by what Steve Jobs is doing, though I have to admit that the only product I'm using from his products is the iPod. I don't have iPhone and I don't have iPad, and I'm using Windows because the Hebrew of the Macintosh is still, it's not done by Steve Jobs yet. I mentioned my oldest son. My oldest son was one of the 4 Israeli kids who invented instant messaging, which was one of Israel's greatest contribution to the reduction of productivity of the world. And I remember like today that at the end of the first month we had 3,500 users, and we were astonished because we didn't think we will have more than 3,000 users. In the end of the second month we had 10,000 users. At the end of 10 months we had 1 million. At the end of 12 months we had 2 million. At the end of 18 months, we had 12 million users, and then we sold it to AOL in a very celebrated deal, which overnight made me thin, tall, blonde, handsome, blue-eyed, wonderfully dressed, and very smart. Everything I began to say, people would listen. But I was obsessed. And then every day 100,000 new users came to use the software until today. It's not known, but more people downloaded and installed, not went to the site, downloaded and installed the software of ICQ during the years than there are members of Facebook. And it's 100,000 people day in, day out, at least until 3 or 4 years ago. I don't follow the number in recent years, but it was an amazing phenomenon, and I had an idea. I say to myself, if I will be able to decipher, to understand why people are coming to take the program in such huge rate, 100,000 people is like a city, a city every day, another city, another city, another city. I said, if I will understand it, maybe I will be able to replicate it, and I will create a factory like cookie cutter to create companies with huge viral product. I try to develop the unified, globalized, generalized theory of compelling user experience. I spent 3 years, I bought 200 books about theater and cooking and excursions and spectaculars and sex and every dimension of human life which give great experience. And then I came with a very impressive slide presentation with 400 slides. I'm not joking. And I defined Avadi Rule. Everybody likes to have a rule called after him. And this rule says that the amount of slides on a presentation you prepare times your level of understanding the subject is constant. And I fell flat on my face, and then I got the epiphany, I got the understanding that in order to create a wonderful experience, you need something that you cannot define. This is a God gift, because if it wouldn't be a God gift, if you could reduce it to algorithm, then Mr. Tischler and Mr. Beninja would have in their curricula a course how to become Leonardo da Vinci, how to become Shakespeare, how to become Picasso. You cannot reduce it into algorithm. Very few of us, very, very few of us are given this God blessing that they are able to come with great user experiences. And of course, of this generation, Steve Jobs is probably the ultimate, definitely in the field of technology. And this is why I elected to start by telling the story. I'll tell you another story. The other story is about a biochemistry that no one, I'm willing to bet, no one here ever heard his name. His name is Irving Chargaff. Irving Chargaff. Anybody knows who is Irving Chargaff? Hey guys, you have iPhones. You can go to the Google, to the Wikipedia, and you will know it. Okay. He was a guy born in Chernovich, probably Jewish. Doesn't say, but I guess he's Jewish. He left Europe from Chernovich. He went to Vienna, became biochemist in Vienna before World War II, and then he went to United States, became a professor in Columbia University. And Irving Chargaff discovered the proteins which are connecting the double helix. As you know, anybody heard about the double helix? Who knows what is the double helix? One person. Who doesn't know what is the double helix? Two. So we have here one guy who knows what is the double helix, two guys who doesn't know, and the rest cannot understand my accent. So nevertheless, those who don't know what is the double helix, you can go to Wikipedia, the source of all wisdom. I saw in Wikipedia an article about the country of Mali, which says Mali is a landlocked country known for its horrible referees. This is the wisdom of the crowd. So nevertheless, back to Erwin. So he discovered the proteins which are connecting the double helix. Based on his discovery, the two guys who discovered the double helix, he discovered only the protein, the connections. You know, double helix is two helixes, and they are connected like a twisted ladder. They are connected with 3 proteins each time, and this defines the DNA. Who discovered the double helix? Very good. I'm impressed. So there are here more than one guy who heard about it. Watson and Crick discovered the double helix. They got the Nobel Prize for it. They wrote a book which was called How Surprising the Double Helix. And Mr. Chargaff wrote a review about the book. Now, you have to understand that he was a little bit bitter because he thought, and probably rightly so, that he was entitled to get also the Nobel Prize because he made a major discovery which enabled the guys to make the final discovery. And in the way, Watson and Crick forgot some other people. There is some other character who is very known in this story. Anybody knows who it is? It was the lady, which I don't remember her name, that... Very good. Good. Rosalind Franklin. Can you tell them about Rosalind Franklin?
She was the crystallographer who actually unraveled the structure of the DNA that we use, and she was forgotten about by Watson and Crick.
Yeah, not only forgotten, they visited her laboratory. She showed them the Röntgen crystallography which shows the double helix. She wasn't able to understand the meaning of it, but they saw it. They didn't say a word. They walked out of her laboratory and came with this discovery. A very nice book was published last year, and it's really a very interesting story. Nevertheless, back to Chargaff. So he wrote in his critique, he wrote the following thing. He said if Shakespeare wouldn't write his novels, and if Picasso wouldn't draw the Mademoiselles of Avignon, nobody else could have done it other than them. But if scientist A wouldn't discover something, then scientist B or C can discover it a year, 2 years later. This is the huge difference between discovery and between creativity. And creativity, I think, is the holy grail of defining whole new paradigms. The science discovers things which are already embedded there, from the time the world was created. But things which come from the brain of people cannot be replicated. No two guys will write the same Shakespeare novel, and we need the Steve Jobs in order to come with this type of thing. So if you look on the tools that you received in your studying, I think it's very important not just to go and try to deploy them in managing existing things, in coping, with issues of cash flow, etc. But I think that the real challenge and the real opportunity is to try and to ask yourself what you can do in addition to the tool. What are the things that you can go and pursue, and what accomplishments you can do just following your hunches. And this is, I think, one of the most important things. In order to be able to do it, to go and try to thrive, to do, I don't want to say great things because it sounds a little bit pompous, but to do things which are out of the ordinary, to take initiatives, to try new things, to try and create a startup, to try to have an idea and to pursue it, people are facing a barrier, a huge barrier. And what is the barrier? There is a Neuro Economies, this is a new kind of profession, by the name of Greg Burns. He is a neuroeconomist in Georgia Tech, and he wrote a book called The Iconoclast, and he tried to find what are the virtues of people which are able to do great things. And he says that many people have ideas, but most of them are not pursuing them. They are not pursuing them because the main barrier for people to go and try to do great things is the fear of looking stupid. The fear is not the fear of failure, but the fear of the criticism and the mockery and the fear that you will look stupid. Now we go now back to Steve Jobs. I think one of the most important virtues of Steve Jobs and other entrepreneurs is their ability or their drive or their desire to go and do new things which make them overcome this fear that all of us has of looking stupid. As Asher said, I'm involved in many startups, and I can tell you that whenever one of my startups is being closed, there is a little field day in the Israeli press. At 2000, when I had to close maybe 6 or 7 of my companies, every month there was a title. Another Vardi company was closed. It was not a very happy experience, I can tell you that, until I found a way how to immune myself. And usually, you didn't say it, so you didn't give me the plug, but usually when I'm being introduced, the gracious person who introduced me say Vardi had 16 exits. And by the way, you say that I'm modest. Yeah? So I have to tell you that I was interviewed by Rino Tzror like a year ago, and everybody told me how modest I was in the interview. And my son, Oded, who is a graduate of this faculty, that I suggest you will invite him to talk about the cultural difference between Israelis and Americans. He has a very interesting talk about it, which maybe I will quote if I still have time. I don't know how much time I can continue to talk until you get tired of me. But nevertheless, he told me, Dad, it was very nice how modest you were at Rino Tzror interviewed, and decided. And I want to tell you that I really like to see how you are running from one microphone to the other to exhibit your modesty. So this is the treatment I'm getting in my own. Nevertheless, going back to failure. So when I'm being presented and people are telling all my exit, I now, in recent years, I say, hey, forget about my exit. I have much more impressive trailer of failures. I have some wonderful failures, and on the top of my failures, I have also an even more impressive list of mishaps, where I was offered to invest in very low valuations, and I passed them, and I can give you now some very, very nice examples, which in the Israeli culture, usually this is the highlight of my talk. You know, when I tell the people how I missed great opportunities to invest, everybody is becoming very happy for whatever reason. So if this is what makes them happy, I make them happy. I want to conclude this short, not so short, talk about failure and success and pursuing your beliefs and desire by quoting one of the greatest presidents of United States, and this is Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt, not Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt. In the year 1910 was, you have an iPhone? So while I'm talking, go and search in the iPhone, Theodore Roosevelt, the man in the arena. And I want you to read the third paragraph. So Theodore, this will be a dramatic end of my talk. Theodore Roosevelt went to collect the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1910 and made a stopover in the Sorbonne, and he gave a very impressive talk called The Man in the Arena. Did you find? You see, it's not the man?
It's in PDF.
It's in PDF? You cannot read it?
I can read it.
Yeah, come over.
Download it.
Give him a minute to download the PDF. I already exhausted what I have to say, you know. So. You got it? Not yet. Wi-Fi. You give. Don't be nervous. It's okay. You have it? It's not the man. Yeah, come over here to the microphone. The paragraph, it's not the man.
Which one? The Pioneer?
No, it's not the man. The third one.
This was the most. Which one?
The man in the arena.
As the country grows?
No.
It is?
No.
It is well?
You find it? Okay,
it?
good.
It's not the critic. It's not the critic?
It's not the critic. Yeah, read it to your friends. And remember this paragraph. Take it with you for my talk. This is the most important one.
Okay. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end of the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Thank you very much.